But I'm really pleased to be here because the relationship between Ireland and Canada is a really important economic and a really important political relationship. Before I say a word about that, though, I want to say a word about Canada and about the new and increasing role that they are playing in many of the really big global debates that are taking place at the moment. If you look at the change in global debate that is taking place in relation to the nature of global trade, in relation to the support for multilateral economic and political institutions, it's very fair to say that because of the changing tone that we are seeing from some countries at the moment, the world needs new champions for the value of trade and for the value of international cooperation. And a new champion of that is a country who has always been a very strong voice for those kind of values, but now finds itself having to make the case for those values on a global stage. And that, of course, is Canada. And Canada, through Prime Minister Trudeau, through the outgoing Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade, have really been at the fore of making the case for organisations like the United Nations, like the World Trade Organization, and have been willing to make the case for the value of trade and for the value of international cooperation at a time in which others have not been willing to do it, and at a time in which one of their nearest and biggest neighbours has begun to feel very differently about those values and about ways of working together. And for a small open country like Ireland that relies very much on needing supporters of global trade and needing vocal champions of global cooperation, we rely therefore on Canada and the work they are doing in making that case at the moment. And it has to be said, they'll be making that case at a time in which it would have been easy to look elsewhere. It would have been easy to be silent on some of these issues. And that has not happened with the outcoming and incoming Canadian government. And we're really grateful to them for the work that they have done. I said when I came in and I met members of the Canadian Embassy who are here today, and great to meet you, that I was having a look at the FT this morning and seeing the new cabinet that had just been appointed. And it's great to see the focus that Mr. Trudeau has now on bringing some new figures into the cabinet, but really important figures within that cabinet taking on increasing really important roles. And as I look at that kind of cooperation that's underway, only a few weeks ago I had an opportunity to see it in action. I was over at the annual IMF meetings that take place, and Ireland and Canada literally share a room together. Like, we are in a room. You go into this room where we're organised by constituency, and the first two flags that you see when you walk in are the Canadian flag and the Irish flag. And if you ever wanted a more tangible example of cooperation, it's something like that. And as Deirdre already said a moment ago, at a time in which our backs were really against the wall, and our back was really against the wall in cooperation and engagement that we needed within the IMF, Canada, as members of our constituency and also as a country that felt strongly about the need for cooperation, pressed the case for Ireland in some really, really important debates and some really important decisions. And for that, I and we should always be grateful. And as we look to where we are now, it's really interesting to see the nature of that economic relationship at the moment. The figures tell their own story, but the figures are still so significant. The stock of Canadian investment here in Ireland stands at 14 billion euros. The stock of Irish investment in Canada stands at 6 billion. And it's a real sign now of how important cooperation is on an economic level between both countries. Ireland at the moment is the 13th largest source of investment into Canada. And Canada is the 10th biggest source of investment into Ireland. So it's a relationship that really matters to both sides, despite the fact, of course, that the Canadian economy is many, many, many multiples the size of the Irish one. If you look at the kind of engagement and the kind of values that are at play here, a really practical example of this now is the new trading relationship that has been agreed between Ireland and Canada, between the European Union and Canada, CETA. And you'll all be aware of the pressure and debate that's underway in relation to these trade agreements at the moment. I'm really ambitious that while other countries and other parts of the world are talking about the need for new, fantastic trade agreements, that Ireland and the European Union are at the forefront of actually making them happen. This was a really, really important trading relationship between the European Union and Canada. And in the first year of operation of this new trading agreement, the goods trade between Ireland and Canada has grown by 1/3. And it's a really extraordinary example of the fact of how we, through our membership of the European Union, can be at the forefront of making trading relationships with good friends in different parts of the world. In fact, there are some figures that have come out of the European Commission today that says that Irish support for the European Union being our voice on global trading matters. 82% of people support that way of working, and it's the second highest in the European Union. It may have something to do that the new commissioner in charge of those trade negotiations is from Ireland, but I suspect actually that's only a small factor in it, because Irish people, and particularly as a small country, well understand the need to make our case through a larger group of neighbours, which is what the European Union is about. But at a time when these kind of agreements have been under such pressure, it tells so much about the alignment of values between Ireland, Canada and the European Union, that this is an agreement now that is in the early year of operation and is already delivering great benefits both for Ireland, Canada and for Europe. If I look at, as I touched on a moment ago, the kind of change that is happening elsewhere, we're all aware of the kind of change and debate that's happening in our friends in the United Kingdom. One of the temptations that's always there is to say we should look elsewhere, we should look at new markets, we should look at ways in which we can more rapidly diversify. In fact, Canada is a case for why we should think about it differently, because it isn't a new market, it isn't a new friend, it isn't a new trading partner. It's one we've had now for many, many, many decades. It's already a really valued trading partner and friend. Some of you may be aware now at the moment of the work that is underway to look at how we can even deepen our footprint within Canada further. The Enterprise Ireland have just announced now that we're going to be opening up a new office in Montreal. That is just a way in which we're looking to deepen our footprint there and look at ways in which we can encourage Canadian companies to invest here and sell their goods and services here, but as importantly ensure that Irish companies are willing and able and supported in doing the same within Canada. And that really matters, because if I end with where I begun, as I look at the huge value we have to place on the value of trade and the value of multinational and multilateral cooperation and how that can be to the benefit of peoples, we have a really big country and economy in Canada that's looking to make that case all the time, and we have a small open economy located within Europe that's looking to make that case as well. Trade, multilateral cooperation, international institutions now need new allies and new champions. And the most effective allies and champions can be big countries and small countries. We have a wonderful friendship between both countries. All of you are here because of the value that you place on that economic relationship. Both economically, culturally and politically, This is a relationship that has a great history and has a great future ahead of us. But in order to realise that, we need organisations like the Ireland-Canada Business Association, and we need both countries to continue to invest in that friendship and in that relationship. That's always happened, and I'm really optimistic that it's going to continue into the future. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. For those of you who are visiting the National College of Ireland for the first time, it's a smashing organisation that does great work here across Ireland and in Dublin and in the northeast inner city. And if you don't know too much about it at the moment, I'd really urge you to take the opportunity of being here on their great campus to learn a little more. So thank you to Patrick and everybody for the invitation to be here. Hope you have a great morning, and I hope the business relationship between both countries continues to flourish for decades and centuries to come. Thank you.